In today's video, we got to take a slight detour from the daily dose of doom and gloom. And my friends, do not touch that dial, because if you are a person who watches this channel and you are not a prepper, you must just be some kind of mental masochist who likes to hear bad news. Because if you're not pairing this with actionable information, then it's not worth a damn. You're just wasting your time. You're pissing in the wind. Now, today we are going to talk about propulsion. We are going to talk about vehicles. Bug out vehicles. What is the ideal bug out vehicle for you in the proverbial end of days? Now, in 2019, after the Cybertruck's reveal, I released a video that was entitled Tesla Built a Beast of a Bug Out Vehicle, and I love it. Cybertruck. I was one of the few preppers in this space who actually embraced the concept for numerous reasons, with the exception of range. And I can hear you guys in the comment section already. Electromagnetic pulse is going to turn this thing into a 7,000-pound brick, and you are correct. However, that's going to do that to most vehicles on the road, unless, of course, you have a Faraday garage. More on that in another future video. In the future, you're going to need a Faraday garage, because unless you have some old diesel, from the 70s or 80s, it's very likely there's going to be electrical components in there that are going to get fried. Anyways, do not base your life around electromagnetic pulse, as close as we may be getting to that point. Elon Musk, I thought, for the longest time, was the world's greatest prepper. I mean, the guy's digging tunnels with the boring, thing. Who knows where he's digging these tunnels to, the center of the earth for all we know. He's got bases being built, at least in theory, on Mars, so that we can become a multi-planetary species and bounce from Earth. Well, probably only the rich people, but at least somebody's going to survive, right? If the shit hits the fan and the Earth goes up in smoke. He's got the Starlink system for off-grid communications, which of course is a double-edged sword, because that means they can track you wherever you go. He's got the power wall, the solar roof, basically off-grid mixed with technology. It doesn't get any better than that. And in terms of propulsion systems, EVs are far superior in almost every single metric to an ICE vehicle, with the exception, that's internal combustion engine, with the exception of range, okay? And now range, for 95% of people, is really not an issue, because most people don't use a tank of gas a day. But that's another story. We got to talk about why the Cybertruck really is, and really captivated me at the start, and why I still do think that it's a revolution. Not only for, and it's going to be a high bar for entry at the start because they're very expensive, and but I see that quickly coming down over time. Anyways, it's always the case with new technologies, but it's just a massive leap, not only for the technology, but also for preparedness. And it's also, interestingly, it signifies a cultural shift towards what is more apocalypse-proof hardware, which is interesting coming from Silicon Valley, a place that was known for its lattes and its soy boy culture, we'll say. So to go from, what looks like, most Model 3s, in my personal opinion, they look like vagina mobiles. And no disrespect to people who have vaginas, they look very feminine. Okay, and that's one of the problems I have with the Model 3. There's nothing about it that seems like a masculine vehicle. And to go from that to the complete opposite, complete 180, was completely unexpected. But when you understand that most Silicon Valley tycoons are actually closet preppers, then it makes sense. Now, anyways, let's talk about the benefits here, as we have Elon rocking the mic in the back section. Now, these are, by and large, this will be one of the most rugged vehicles. I'm just going to rattle off the specs. So it's got shatter-resistant armor glass that can resist the impact of a baseball at 112 kilometers an hour. Not bulletproof, but better than what your truck has and my truck has, personally. This acoustic glass also helps make the cabin as quiet as outer space, which is cool. Something to consider, and there's a lot of stuff I'm going to talk about that you haven't thought of from a preparedness mindset when it comes to EVs today. One of those things is stealth. These things are incredibly quiet. If you're creeping through the apocalypse, if you so happen to have a solar panel array, which will allow you to perpetually charge this thing, assuming that, you'll be creeping around and nobody's going to know. And you could ride shotgun in your own vehicle because it's going to have self-driving also. Let's just hope that at some point you can jailbreak these things and you really can go rogue style with them. No paint, no chips. So if you don't want to paint it, and this is what I kind of liked about it initially, was that it wasn't trying to look good. It was trying to function good. It was purely function over fashion for the most part, even though it's got a really good drag coefficient from what I hear. An ultra hard stainless steel, I believe it's cold rolled steel exoskeleton, helps to reduce dents, damage, and long-term corrosion. So they're beating this thing up with, you know, like a sledgehammer, and it's kind of going back to how cars used to be in the 70s and 80s when you had those boats. One gripe some people might have about this is that it weighs 7,000 pounds. But to put in perspective, the Ford Raptor weighs 6,000 pounds almost. So it's a difference, but it's not a huge difference. As you can see here, this thing's bulletproof with a .45 caliber at 935 feet per second. We also have a 9mm Glock at 1,100 feet per second. So obviously that's as high, that's as bulletproof as it's going to get in its current form, which is better than nothing, I guess. That's pretty impressive. And with the design, because it's this polygonal design, and because there's only going to be one of these types of products, you can bet that there's going to be a lot of aftermarket stuff. And it's going to be really easy to mod because there's no crazy angles. It's all straight lines. So if you wanted to reinforce this into a real Mad Max vehicle, it wouldn't be that difficult, okay? One of the other things to remember, before I forget, the flat bottom, okay? So when you're doing off-roading, you got all that shit underneath a truck. I mean, pipes and, you know, axle and all this crazy stuff going on under there, right? But with EV, it's just flat, okay? It's one flat thing encased in a weatherproof. It's a skid plate. The whole thing's a skid plate. So, and a lot of people don't think about these things. They just think, oh, that's stupid. You know, they don't even think about it. Just think for a second, okay? So, it's got that aspect going for it. No maintenance, no oil changes. Never gonna have to change the brakes because it has regenerative braking, which is kind of like, what is the thing that connects to the battery in the car? I'm always losing I'm pulling a Joe Biden here lately. It's gonna come to me. It starts with an A. Oh, I hate when this happens. Joe Biden moment. What the hell is it again? Alternator, that's what it is. Okay, yeah, it's got alternators essentially in the wheels. So it's regenerative braking. Don't have to change the brakes. No transmission fluids, nothing. No fluids, zero, absolute zilch. That in itself is incredible. Now, one of the downsides is you have a lot of proprietary stuff going on. So I think the tires for this are going to be very expensive. The replacement components are probably going to be very expensive because they're not going to be able to build them en masse, which would bring the price down like other things which are universally usable. So that's something to consider. Talked a bit about the stealth. Now, in terms of the range of the vehicle, they're claiming that it's going to be 550 kilometer range. That's going to depend on how you drive it. With the Tesla that I own currently, you know, the stated range is only, you can get close to it if you drive it really proper and you don't have it in the, what do they call it, the performance mode, ludicrous mode, okay? If you don't have it in the top mode and you're not zipping around all over the place, and when you're rocketing this 7,000 hunk of steel to its maximum of 0 to 100 in 2.6 seconds, and that is going to be an incredibly useful Mad Max metric, then you know you're going to be burning that battery real fast, and the battery is massive. We'll talk about that in just a moment. So in terms of the top speed, I was actually a little disappointed in the top speed. Only 209 kilometers an hour. So only 100 kilometers over what is legal in most parts of Canada. That's a darn shame. 0 to 60 in 2.7 seconds. Some are saying 2.6 seconds. That's actually better than what was initially promised, which was 0 to 60 in 3 seconds. So really not a huge difference there. Most cars on the road don't go faster than 0 to 100 in 5 seconds. So, of course, Teslas have been hitting under 2 seconds for many years now. Power, 845 horsepower. One of the biggest selling points for this device, and one of my biggest gripes with Teslas thus far, is the lack of bidirectional charging. So what that means is that you can use all of the battery in the Cybertruck to power your home in case of an emergency. And this thing has, I think, up to 11.5 kilowatt output, which is more than enough to power everything in your home. Now, if you're in an emergency and your dumbass is using 11.5 kilowatt hours a day, yeah, you're going to run the battery pack down probably in about, I don't know, 2 weeks, because I think they're saying that the battery pack is going to be 120 kilowatt hours to 180 kilowatt hours if you get the extension. So 120 kilowatt hours, or sorry, no, I totally messed up my math here. If you're a dumbass and you are cranking, you got everything in your house lit up and you're using 12 kilowatts of power, it's only going to last you about half a day. But if you are conservative, okay, this is the equivalent of around 120 of those portable power systems, just like this. It's about 120 of these, okay? So, and if you get the range extender pack, which is probably going to weigh a ton, then you can bring it up to 180. So consider that a power wall, I believe it's around 13.5 kilowatt hours of power. So you're essentially getting almost 10 power walls in the Cybertruck. So it's incredibly dual purpose, especially for emergencies. Now, again, I'm not trying to sell you guys on this concept. I just get excited about stuff which is being engineered for the dystopian future that awaits and may, in fact, be a part of the reason why we enter the dystopian future. So more on that in just a minute. Now, in terms of the self-driving features, most people have no idea, okay? You have no idea how good self-driving is. Not even the self-driving, but just the one that's right underneath that. I can't remember what exactly it's called. It's like some kind of autonomous level of driving, but it's not quite full self-driving. Not the FSD, which still has a lot of bugs and still has some ways to go. But in terms of just the ability of the car to stay in the lane, I mean, that is such an incredible feature for 90% of your commute. That can basically do the driving for you, okay? And if we're talking about at some point in the not so distant future, I think we're only a couple years away now that they have these AI simulators working on this kind of stuff in the like these simulacrums in the anyways. It's only a matter of time before it's full self-driving. So you can imagine, and the full self-driving doesn't rely on GPS. It only requires the sensors in the vehicle, the optical system in the vehicle. So it will function disconnected from the grid. So theoretically, if shit were to hit the fan, your FSD would still work. So imagine, if you will, for a second, you're being tailed by a bunch of road warriors and you're the only guy in the car. You happen to have your machine gun, but nobody to take the wheel. You just put it in self-driving and you get to work. Okay, this is how preppers think, but this really is the future, okay? So let's just hope we can jailbreak that, because right now there's way too many nanny state controls in the damn thing for it to be even mildly interesting at this point. But let's hope at some point, there is a right to repair phase of this whole thing. Bioweapon defense mode. So what weapon defense mode is, and this is something they already have in the Model S. It's something that has a built-in grade, hospital-grade HEPA filter that helps provide protection from 99.97% of airborne particles. So this is made for the apocalypse. It's got your bioweapon defense mode. The shit hits the fan, the rage virus hits the streets. You got to keep those viral particles out of your vehicle. You're ready to go. Now, even the design of this, I mean, look at the approach angle. There's no front end, and they did that on purpose, so that you're never going to get hung up. I mean, I'm sure that it's not as dialed in for off-road use as something like the Rivian, which they've taken a lot of time to try to master as a truck. But the problem with the Rivian is that they stuck with that very limiting truck design, where they got this big nose sticking out the front that's like 2 feet over the front tire. So with the Cybertruck design, it really eliminates that. And this is the thing with this functional fixedness when it comes to truck building, is that for years we just assumed that this is how a vehicle has to look, because you need that space in the front for the engine. Well, with an EV propulsion, you don't need that big, thing in the front. In fact, you could get rid of that altogether. Probably wouldn't make the vehicle as safe. You probably want a little bit of steel in front of you, just in case. But I think you get my point. So what the Cybertruck does then is it takes that one step further. And so this could very well be the beginning, I don't think in its current form, but the approach angle and the rear angle are all much better than most off-road vehicles on the market today, okay? We have a 2,500 pound payload, which is respectable. I mean, it's not that great. My jacked up Tundra originally had 1,200 pounds because of the lift kit that I had on it. But if you were to add, more leaf springs, or there's various things you can do to somewhat increase the payload. But so 2,500 pounds is pretty good. It's not like a Ford F-350 or anything like that, which I'm presuming is in the 5,000 pound range. But it's enough for most people. It's enough that you could put a camper thing on there if you wanted to. But again, I don't really necessarily think that this is going to be the ideal cross-country, go on an adventure type vehicle. I don't think it will be, namely because of the range. Now, once you start to have a lot more supercharging networks everywhere, then sure, this thing will supercharge in spite of the massive battery. It's going to supercharge in an hour, just like most Teslas. But when the grid goes down, obviously you're not going to be doing a lot of long-term commuting. And there are talks that they're going to be putting a solar panel on the roof, and it's going to there might be some aftermarket modifications in terms of that. But even that, the surface area that you have on that roof is only going to get you, I believe they calculated it to be about an extra 15 miles of range per day. Now, over time, if it's just sitting out and you don't use it for a few days, or maybe you're only commuting just to work and back, that could add up over time. That trickle charge could add up. It's got, and this is, I talked a bit about the power output, but that cannot be overstated. The fact that this thing is essentially a power wall on wheels, and this can power your home. So you have to take that into account. A power wall costs, I think they cost around 10 grand or something like that. They're very expensive. So you're getting this huge power wall system, which in and of itself, if you were to actually buy all the individual power walls, would cost you as much, if not more, than the truck itself. And of course, you don't get a truck. So that bidirectional charging, man, is incredible. And it's got 120 volt and 240 volt outlets in the bed. It's got a light bar on the top. We'll probably scroll through the actual website in just a moment here. It's got a built-in tonneau cover that apparently it's one of those rolling ones that kind of looks like a shutter. And apparently it can support a couple 100 pounds. I think in one of the videos Jay Leno and Elon Musk was standing on, I'm pretty sure those guys combined are pushing the 450 range at least. Like I said, lots of customizability because of the design and the form factor. We got 17 inches of clearance. And most people, again, for the average guy who drives a truck, most people, unless you're on a farm and you're doing a lot of commuting and you're doing a lot of hauling, even if you are doing a lot of hauling, how long are you actually traveling every day? Are you really going to exceed the range of the vehicle every single day? Because most people who drive trucks, they just drive them to work. And honestly, from a construction worker point of view, most work trucks, unless you're really working in the sticks, most work trucks are within range of the grid anyways. So if you can have this as a work truck, have all your power tools connected, to this thing. I mean, that is just incredible. And have full power, no restrictions. We're talking about 11 kilowatts of power. That's insane. I think the biggest system that we've tested has 7 kilowatts that it outputs, and you have to combine 2 of them together and all this stuff. Not that you're going to need, I mean, there's nothing really that you're going to power that's that much power at all. If you're being really wasteful with all your power, then sure, you will burn a lot of juice and you won't survive long. And you probably, yeah, just don't be a prepper. Now, in terms of the cons, obviously the range is going to be a factor, but I will say this, at least you'll have an opportunity, because once that gasoline runs out, and if you don't have a horse, and if you missed the video that we did a month and a half ago when people were saying, hey, you're not making prepping videos, it's because all they watch is the daily dose of doom and gloom, and they don't realize that we're releasing 2 or 3 videos of those, like of that nature every week. We did a video on horses, and we said, yeah, the horse is the ultimate, you know, off-grid, Mad Max, full-blown SHTF mode of commuting. But at least with the Cybertruck, and you could say, well, I can make biodiesel, and it's hard making biodiesel, man. You're going to be struggling just to survive. I mean, to get to the point where you're going to have a reliable biodiesel source, system, expertise, people to actually do the work in order to do that, it's going to be a while. So while yes, you can convert, you know, your cars to run on all sorts of different things, you get yourself a deuce and a half that will run on virtually anything, but at least you're going to have the possibility. There's a lot of solar panels around. Now, you're going to need a large solar array to even trickle charge this thing. We're talking about 120 kilowatt hours. I would presume that maybe the average home has somewhere between 5 and it's been a while since we did our solar generation video. I presume the average home maybe has 5 kilowatts to 10 kilowatts. Maybe some of the larger arrays have even more to that. If you have like a 20 kilowatt array, and the Tesla Cybertruck, if you have the right kind of charging system, you're not going to have a supercharging system at your home. So you're going to have probably one step down from that, which is it's not quite fast, but I believe it's, what is it? I can't remember. It's not the 250 kilowatt, but I think it's about 1/10 of that charging, which doesn't seem like much, except when you think that the wall charging that'll take 4 or 5 days to charge this thing if you're just charging it from an AC outlet. If my Tesla is any baseline comparison. So if you get the middle of the road home charger, you're probably looking at charging this thing on your solar array, but that's all the juice that's going to be going in there. Now, if you're using this dual purpose and you're using it as a battery, you're obviously going to need a power wall to kind of offload that power, or to be the intersect. Because if you're just relying on the Cybertruck for all your home's power needs, then every time you take the Cybertruck somewhere, your home is going to be disconnected from a power source. But I mean, for some people that might not even be an issue. But obviously you're going to want, you know, refrigeration. Certain things have to run all the time. So for most people, it likely would be an issue unless you had some backup power supply. But just to know that it has that bidirectional charging capability is freaking amazing, in my opinion. Now, in terms of the price, the top trim is coming in at $100,000 USD. So well outside the price range. And what very likely will happen is that all of the rich people are just going to be running over the poor people in the dystopian future awaits in their Cybertrucks. That's sad, but true. So, you know, we're going to have to wait for the price to come down a little bit. But let's just take a look at their website here to see. And the reason why I show you guys this is because I think this helps us to conceptualize, you know, what our needs are going to be if such a major shift hit the fan event were to occur. And by analyzing technology like this, we can perhaps better understand what those needs will in fact be. So you can see there's almost no front end in front of the wheel. That's incredible. That is incredible. Now, I don't know how well this thing is going to haul ass up a steep incline. But I like the fact too that it has this extra volume within the truck bed. So while it's kind of an awkward angle and it's going to be hard to customize, because if you do want some kind of racking system that's not slanted, you're going to need some sort of piece to compensate for that angle. But it's still neat, and I'm sure there's going to be all kinds of aftermarket mods. The great thing when there's only one of something, just like an iPhone, is you get all sorts of variety for aftermarket products. So, but I like this because it gives you that extra volume, plus that tonneau cover comes down. Now, most people are probably never going to use the truck bed a lot anyways, because most people just never use their truck beds, believe it or not. But if you do, then having that extra space. But now that I think about it, it would be kind of awkward too to be able to use, to have to use this space, because you know, what sort of shape of thing is going to fit better in the back? I don't know. I haven't really thought too much about that, but it does have adaptive suspension and you can control it. So if you want to lower the back end to get something out of the trunk, so that's a pretty cool feature that it has. 5,000 kilogram towing capacity. I didn't even mention that. So in terms of towing, yeah, it's going to be able to tow that much. But one thing Tesla doesn't talk about is how the range is going to be affected by towing 10,000 pounds of shit. As you can see here, it's easily going through water. I believe they showed that because they want to show that it's, you know, it's waterproof for the most part. I'm guessing this thing can go anywhere that a ICE vehicle can go. Of course, an ICE vehicle requires that snorkel, as long as you get that air into the engine. With this, you don't even need that. Okay, there's nothing. It's just a battery. And so as long as that battery pack is waterproof, which I'm sure it has to be, just like all Teslas, then you can virtually go anywhere. You could probably submerge it a lot. I don't think you're ever going to get it to like an ATV level, but no paint, no chips. An ultra hard stainless steel exoskeleton helps to reduce dents, damage, and long-term corrosion. And you know, think about the paint jobs and just the customizability, man. That's going to be epic. And I do actually think that these are going to be good job site vehicles. I don't know why you would put dirt and then feel the need to roll up the tonneau cover like they did there. I think that was kind of stupid. That's like this one B-roll that we used, the communist cameraman put in the video once. There's some really bad B-roll out there, but there's these couples who are in this field and they have a flower pot, and it's like a farmer's field of crops, and they're watering this big field of crops with this little flower pot. And I guess, I don't know, trying to show how you would irrigate crops from a yuppie urban perspective. So there it shows you all the stuff that you can fit in it. 6x4 foot bed, so 6 feet, that's pretty good. My Toyota Tundra with the Crew Max only has 5.5 feet, I believe. So if I sleep in the back end, I gotta turn sideways. So this one, I can actually sleep end to end. So I hope that they have some sort of entranceway in there so that you can just, you know, access the back, but I'm not sure they do because I didn't see that. But if they have that, you don't need that goofy looking tent thing that they're trying to bust out. I don't see why, you know, you would buy something like this and not have some sort of hard topper option that you would market with it. I don't even know if I necessarily like or feel that the entire windshield is necessary. I think this could have came with some sort of built-in solar panel system. Make better use of that space up top. I don't need a moonroof. Some people might. The fact that you can lock it up and that it's built really tough is cool. That's security in mind. So more security is always great. It looks like these hubcaps have some sort of protective, like they're protective, and they cover part of the tire, which may protect your sidewalls a little bit, which is kind of cool. Into the wild, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, I don't know about into the wild, really, because, you know, you're going to be limited. Range anxiety is definitely a thing with any Tesla. I mean, there's a demonstration where he's showing it pulling a Porsche 911, beating a Porsche 911. Probably not the top trim of that vehicle, but still, nonetheless, I mean, most people cannot comprehend 0 to 60 in 2.7 seconds. It is heart-pounding fast, okay? When you get that instant torque of an EV, it's incredible. In terms of it's got all the uppy features inside. It's got like 15 speakers, bunch of screens everywhere. We're going to talk about the evil part in just a moment, okay? So we got the Bioweapon Defense mode, which is kind of cool. You know, if the apocalypse happens, you're charging. We got, you know, the speaker system and some screens, as if the kids need more screens in the back, but you got them. It's got some pretty cool angles within the vehicle. I really hope this folds down and you can access the cab, because if you can, I'm pretty much sold on this, because I think that would be freaking epic. That would be freaking epic. So they're showing you this tent. I really don't like this tent. I think this is kind of tacky. I just think that it's, you know, you have a $100,000 vehicle and you're going to sleep in this weird little tent. I don't know. If you're going to go that, you just get a hard top thing that you don't have to do all this tent setup and all this business, because it is work. I'm sure it's easy, but this actually doesn't look like an easy tent to set up. I've done rooftop tent reviews. The one I have on the Tundra, you pop that thing up. It literally takes 2 minutes to set up. It's amazing. This looks kind of nutty, to be honest. What else do we got? Okay, we just got specs, and there we go. That's the Cybertruck. Okay, now let's talk about the evil part. Is this, and we know that Elon is doing his best, right? He's a guy with a vision. He wants to bring these various technologies. He's an entrepreneur who I believe is unfortunately beholden to gangs of psychopaths. So let's just be brutally honest. And these gangs of psychopaths, once he creates all these technologies, they just commandeer them. So Starlink, great example, used for the Ukraine war to attack Russia. And they basically said, you're going to allow us to utilize your Starlink service or else. We all know what happened with Twitter, okay? He got a talking to by the principal, Netanyahu, in Israel recently for what's been going on there. What about SpaceX? Well, SpaceX is hauling U.S. military planes, X-37 secret plane that for all we know has a nuclear weapon on it, into space. Okay, now the definition of fascism is the emergence of government and the technocracy, the government and the corporations. And so that really is what it is. It's a marriage. So you have to ask yourself, well, you know, this smart grid, the solar roof and the Tesla Powerwall, as great as these things are from a preparedness point of view, it doesn't really get better. I mean, with the exception of range, it doesn't get better. But you have to ask yourself, is this like a van that says free candy on it? You know, is this the devil's way of enticing people into this market? Hey, come and drive EVs. They're really cool. They're really fast. And, hey, we even got one for you off-grid people. You people who might resist the coming dystopia. We got something for you too. Yeah, come on, get in. Look, it's bulletproof. You can shoot it. Well, it's not entirely bulletproof. The glass broke, but you know, it's mostly bulletproof up to a 9mm. And they try to come on down, you know, they try to get you into it. And then before you know it, this thing is self-driving you to the police station when you forget to pay a parking ticket or something like that. So it's a double-edged sword if there ever was one. And there's cameras everywhere. Okay, this thing is hooked up permanently to the internet. They probably will roll out something where they integrate it with Starlink. So it's always on the internet. Wherever you have 4G, 3G, 5G reception, your Tesla is going to be connected to the internet. It has its own internet source. That's how, and Tesla can control it. They can turn it on, they can turn it off. The other thing is that when I had, I think I got a flat tire on the Model 3 once, and I'm like, where's the spare tire? And they're like, oh, well, you just phone us. You know, don't worry about it. I'm like, well, how is that, there's a jack, but there's no toilet, or I was going to say something. There's a jack, but I was going to say toilet paper for some reason. There's a jack, I'm thinking about toilet paper tablets. There's a jack, but there's no tire in there in order to put on. So they just want you to call roadside assistance, right? So they want you to be like dependent on the grid. So I'm like thinking, this is kind of weird. You got all this extra frunk space. Why wouldn't you want to allow that space for the use of a spare tire? I don't know if there's a spare tire in the Cybertruck. I would hope there is. Other thing is I don't see there's a winch on there. That would be nice. There might take a while to get some OEM winches on this thing. Although actually, now that I think about it, it's a pretty, you could easily probably amend that to this concept pretty easily. But yeah, so there's, it's a double-edged sword, and I'm still a little bit skeptical about the whole thing, to be honest, because they needed something to capture the attention of the hardcore, I'm never going to do that types, right? They needed something that was going to completely crush, that was going to out-masculine the most masculine of vehicles, trucks. And I'm not sure if they necessarily achieved that with the design, but certainly with respect to the specifications they did. So, man, it's a tough call. Let me know what you guys think about the Cybertruck. I can't believe I talked about it for 36 frickin' minutes, but I needed a break from the daily dose of doom and gloom. We know the war is going to get fired up right away. So I just needed a brief reprieve to talk about something mildly optimistic and not ridden with doom. And I'm glad I did this. So let me know what your thoughts are on this. I think I pretty much covered everything. The last thing I want to cover is something called Jovans Paradox. Jovans Paradox is this idea that the more energy we harvest, the more, if we find a new energy source, then we're just going to use more energy, okay? It never works in the opposite direction. When you find more energy, we always end up using more. Anytime we say we're gonna do renewable this or renewable that, it always, in a net zero sense, ends up as more in the end, because we say, oh, well, no, we got extra energy, so we can do this, and then we use a little bit more than we previously were. Cybertruck is a great example of that. You have 120 kilowatt hour battery pack on this thing, 7,000 pounds, basically taken the concept of EV to its maximum, at least for now. And this is not going to be an energy efficient vehicle at all, okay? It's going to actually probably be less efficient than a truck. So if you're buying this to be more efficient, it's going to be a while, I think, before you get to that point. You'd have to crunch a lot of numbers, especially if your power source for your city, where the superchargers and your own home is drawing from, if that is utilizing some sort of petrol-based fuel system to generate electricity, then you're actually getting less power. Like if you're using a generator to charge this thing, like let's say you take a generator and you want to convert that into electricity to charge this thing, you're not going to be able to go as far as if you would have just put that gasoline in your truck. Now there's many arguments that will say on a long enough timeline, I know it is a more green solution. But this is Jovans Paradox. The more we're able to save in certain respects, we just increase the features in another dimension, and it actually gets worse. So you can make that argument. So for all you greenies out there, something to consider. Now on the topic of EMP, I already briefly touched on it. Like I say, I don't base my life around electromagnetic pulse. Most vehicles are not going to work. You can get these devices for your vehicle. I think we sell them at CanadianPreparedness.com actually. The things that you plug in to your vehicle, and they will prevent the EMP from destroying the circuitry in your car. And it's a simple solution. Is it going to be 100%? Probably not, but it's something. Most people don't have a Faraday garage. All that means is that you have a garage that's made of metal, and there's an insulative liner that separates the vehicle And it's basically a metal garage. As long as you have that, then that's basically going to attenuate the EMP pulse and prevent it from damaging the circuitry in your vehicle. So you'll still be able to run over hordes of zombies in the apocalypse. But I don't base my life around that. Let me know what you guys think in the comments section below. See you tomorrow with the news.